How's it going, everyone? Today's video, we're working on the Dodge Viper again, and the reason is we are installing a proportioning valve on this brake setup. So if you guys haven't seen the last two videos, I will link them above as well as down in the description. We installed this big brake kit. This is from the newer Viper, so not necessarily a big brake kit, but it is in respective to this year of car. But these are the stock calipers off of 2003 and up Viper. So we ended up retrofitting them onto this car with the IPSCO brackets, and it looks phenomenal. We haven't got a chance to test it out just yet as far as braking performance, but we got the stainless steel braided lines on there. We got the big calipers on there. I'm excited to get this running, but one of the things is with the this car doesn't have ABS. It's a 2000 model. 2001 is when Viper introduced ABS, but the braking bias isn't set up correctly for such large calipers in the rear. So if we were to just bleed these brakes as they are right now, we would end up locking the rear, since we have so much bite in the back because there was just tiny little baby calipers in the rear prior. So we have everything laid out here, and I'll show you guys what we're going to be doing. So we have a Wilwood proportioning valve, so I'll link that in the description below. These aren't that expensive, you guys, so it's pretty cost effective. Again, I'll link that down below. And then this gets into the fun stuff and the custom part. So I have some brake fittings here, and these are 1/8 thread pitch on here, and then I have some lines, so we're going to be custom making these. And just so you guys are aware, there's different lengths of actual couplings. So you can see I have the shorter ones selected here, whereas these ones are longer, and that's going to matter in just a second when I show you guys what we're doing. Also, I have a cutting tool, so this will cut lines. This here will grab the line because these two go together. So you grab the line, and then this will flare it. So you guys see that flare at the end there? When you cut the line to whatever length you want, you also have to flare it so that it can adapt into this right here. So see that little flare? These are the two fittings. For whatever reason, Wilwood, I'm sure they have their reasoning, but they just gave you straight cut fittings in here, which is 1/8. And then in order to adapt it to this AN style fitting, the compression fitting, you have to use these little two guys. So they gave them to you, but it just makes this thing a little bit longer. And what the plan is, I will show you, is on the car itself, we are going to be installing it right here. So this is our line that goes down, if you follow it around to here, which goes to our rear brake calipers. So we're going to be reducing the amount of line pressure that goes to the rear of the car. So we have a ton of room here. What I want to do is install it right here. I've seen them before where they install them down there. I don't want to put it there because there's a lot of heat here, and if we ever decide to go with headers, it's just going to complicate issues. So I'm going to keep it up high. That way the plastic on the knob doesn't melt or anything like that. And I think it's going to be kind of cool putting it here. The knob will be here right next to our reservoir, and there's enough space in our hood area since this is already accommodated for. So I'm going to try and keep it real tight to here. So what we're going to do is two things. We're gonna end up undoing this, and I'm gonna put the proportioning valve in here. I'm gonna see if I don't think I'll be able to, you guys, but I was debating whether I could bend this in such a way that I didn't have to necessarily cut the factory line. Maybe just push it over and out, but it's gonna come out like 3 inches before it connects. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to bend it that way 3 inches or not. We'll see, but if anything, I'll probably just end up sliding this fitting up to here, cutting it, flaring it, and then we'll install our proportioning valve here. So I have all that stuff ready, as you guys can see on the bench here. So everything's ready to go. I just gotta start playing with this stuff. So we'll get this out of the package. We'll disconnect that brake line, and like I said, we still have to bleed all the brakes afterwards. So, but not until we get that proportioning valve on there. Let's get to work. We definitely know that we're gonna need to use the fittings. So we might as well start off by inserting our fittings onto our Wilwood. It's already got thread sealant, as you can see there. So this is not a compression fitting. This is gonna be sealed on the threads itself. So we might as well get these in, get them tightened up, and then once we get these snug down, we can start working with our compression fittings. All right, so we've got them both tightened down, and just so you guys are aware, you'll see out and in stamped on this proportioning valve. So we have to make sure that the fluid is gonna go in the right direction. Our master cylinder is gonna be on this side, where the in is, out is gonna be going to our brakes. So let's go ahead, go back over the car, and we'll disconnect the line and start figuring out where this is gonna go. Okay, so I'm gonna put this rag down here, because when I disconnect this, I anticipate some brake fluid to be coming out of here. So we'll disconnect the line here. Hopefully she's not too much of a bugger to get off. Let me get this fitting disconnected, and then we'll start getting things plumbed in here. Okay, so there's a little bit of fluid left in the reservoir, so we'll let that obviously run its course onto the rag. And we'll remove the rag just so we don't have to deal with any brake fluid doing anything funny with our paint or anything. So this fitting here is a little bit bigger. What I'm gonna do is, since we're gonna have to take a portion out of this line, I'm gonna reuse this fitting going into our brakes so I don't have to buy a new one. And I'll put in a new piece of brake line, a tiny one, that's gonna convert it over to the 1/8 NPT that's gonna go into our Wilwood. If all that sounds complicated, just give me a few minutes here and I'll show you guys exactly what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna end up nipping this off, and then we're gonna build it out, and once we know exactly where this has to go, then we'll reinstall a new fitting on this side that's gonna be going into our proportioning valve. So it's gonna work out beautifully, trust me, and then I'll show you guys what we end up with. Okay, so there is a flare on the end of this, of course, right? That's where that fitting goes. So in order to get the fitting off, I have to take off and cut the line and remove the flare portion so I can slide this off. So even though we don't know exactly where we wanna end up just yet, I'm gonna cut it down here with our little cutting tool so I can get this fitting off, and then we can start building out our proportioning valve, and then we'll determine where it's gonna go here. So here we go with our cutting tool. If you guys haven't used one of these before, they're pretty fun actually. You just kind of spin it around, and then you tighten it, and then you spin it around, and you just keep doing that, and it just cuts its way through the pipe. And there we go, nice clean cut. Here's our flared portion. We have that off. And now we can slide our fitting off like so. So I'm gonna remove our wet rag since now that is done dripping. We'll take this out, replace it with a clean one, and we can start working. All right, so now that we have our fitting removed, what we're gonna end up doing is, like I said, we're gonna build a little line here. So this is a piece of line that I've purchased, and it already has the factory flare on the end, and we're gonna put another flare on it. So what we'll do is we'll put our original fitting on here. That's gonna hit here, it's gonna butt up. And we're gonna screw that into here. So I'm not gonna bottom it out just yet, but I'm just showing you guys what the plan is. So that's gonna screw into here like so. And then what I'm gonna do is put a 1/8 fitting on here that's gonna screw in our proportioning valve. So I want this line to honestly be as short as possible. So I might only leave like maybe like 1/8 of an inch of line between the two fittings just to keep it nice and short and to keep my proportioning valve over here. So I'm gonna leave this super short, and we'll put a flare on the end of it as well. And that's gonna be the plan here. So let's see what we can get into. All right, so I'm about to start using the flaring tool, and I'm gonna try and cheat this a little bit, you guys. So typically what would happen is if you had a line, you would use this to hold the actual line. But what happens is you have to have your fittings on that line before you put the flare on the end, because then of course you won't be able to get that off. And I actually have this upside down right now, but what I'm gonna try and do is keep my fittings on, and I want to cut this as close as possible and then flare it, because like I said, I want to have the shortest connection possible between my master and the proportioning valve, just so we can keep everything tight over there. But at the same time, this tool isn't really designed to hold fittings. It's meant to hold the line. Like you would have the line, and then you would have your fitting way over here, and you could grab onto this line and put your flare on. So I'm gonna try and see if I can push this on the bench so I can get my flare on the very end of this. First, I gotta cut this down. So let me shorten this, and we'll see how we're gonna put this flare in here. Because what this is gonna do is this drives this little anvil down in, and it puts the flare on there. So let's see what we can make happen. So I made a small little line where I want to cut this off so that, like I said, we have the shortest fittings possible. So we'll cut this right there, and then we'll see about making that flare there. And there we go. There's our portion of brake line. All right, guys, so I actually came up with a little genius idea. So in order to stop my line from pushing out the bottom, I actually am going to use a extra fitting that I have that goes from compression to just a regular 1/8, and that'll hold this from dropping out the bottom while protecting our fittings. So if I screw this in and then I tighten this into here, so it's holding that fitting like that. That'll hold the line from falling out the bottom and gives us a nice surface to press against. So let's get done. Ooh, dang close. All right guys, so I did manage to get the flare on there that I wanted to, and this was the piece that I wanted. Just a small line that goes from this size to that size, and this will go into our actual Wilwood proportioning valve. So I don't know, some of you brake guys out there might know there's probably something that I could go from one compression fitting to another that I wouldn't have to make a short line like this. If that is available, I might go that option, but this should do the job. Like I said, it's just a super short line, but there's probably a fitting that'll just convert the two instead of going through all this fiasco. But at the same time too, having this ability to spin them in between, if you had a solid fitting, you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd have to sit there and try to spin the actual thing. So anyways, let's go ahead and get this rigged up. Okay, one last thing, I'm just gonna clean it off with a bit of brake clean, just in case there's any particles or chunks or anything of that nature in here. So I'll just clean her off real quick. All right, so we got our fitting, so we'll go ahead and screw it into our master on this end, and we'll tighten it up with our 7/16 wrench. And now we can just loosely place in our proportioning valve so we can get an idea of where this thing is gonna sit. I'm gonna take it out in just a second as well so that I can have the room to operate the flaring and cutting tool, or cutting and flaring tool, I should say. So that's roughly where this thing is gonna sit, which I think is gonna be pretty cool. So we're gonna cut the line over here and we'll install our fitting right there. So we're gonna chop out that much roughly. So I'll mark this, we'll remove this out of our way, and then we will cut, flare, and be good to go. All right guys, so I just actually checked my hood clearances and just did a test fit. I'm gonna have to lay this thing down a little bit more like that. Not a big deal, but I tried standing it up and it actually hits over here, I guess right there. So it just touches here on the hood. So I'm gonna lay it down and then we should be perfectly fine. And it's not gonna change much, it's just gonna put it over here slightly. So the line looks like it pretty much wants to go there as it is. So we'll get it trimmed up and get it in there. Okay, so we'll just kind of get a rough idea here of where we need this to be. Where we're gonna cut it is where the flare is gonna go. So I think right about there, we'll mark it here and then we'll make our cut with our cutter. Okay, here we go with our cutter. Not that you have to have the fitting on here, but I was just testing some stuff at the same time. So you guys know how this works by now. Just flip it around a bunch. Once you see it get loose, tighten it up a bit more. And have fun with it, you guys. Just keep spinning this thing. It's gonna be exciting once we get the brakes all finished, that's for sure. And there she is. We'll put this on our flaring tool, which is gonna grab the line. And pretty simple guys, just turn it until we flare the line out. And that's about it. It's pretty straightforward. You don't go crazy on it, but just till you get a flare that looks like similar to what you had before. Then you undo this. Take your tool off. Ta-da, you got a nice little flare on there. All right, now we can go ahead and reassemble everything. I just took this out just to give me a little more room, but we'll go ahead and toss this back in. All right, so all of our lines are tight. We've got everything tight, and this, the way it works, is all the way clockwise is maximum pressure, and when you turn it counterclockwise, it reduces the pressure that comes out. So for now, I just put it to full pressure, and we'll have to dial it back, you know, as we do our testing later. If the rear brakes lock up, then we have to keep dialing it back. So I also put in fluid. I've got DOT4 racing fluid, and what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna bleed the brakes. So I'm gonna attempt to do this myself. Obviously, it's just me here right now, at least I think it is. But I got this little tool here. It's actually from Harbor Freight. I do wanna get a better one at some point, you guys, because with us going to the track and stuff quite a bit, it's almost going to be necessary that we're going to bleed our brakes quite often. So this is just a hand one, but you can actually get one that's pneumatic, that it pulls a vacuum off here, off an air compressor. So this one, you just kind of squeeze this pump and it sucks out of here. It catches the fluid. So I just got it, you know, situated so I could show you guys. So what you're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is start from the furthest braking point. We'll pull and draw clean fluid out of here, and then we'll work our way to the other one and working our way around the car. So we'll do rear passenger, rear driver, then we'll do the front passenger, and then last but not least, we will do the front driver. So that's a sequence. Other thing too is there is 2 bleeders for each side, so we have to let the air out of both sides. Right now I'm just pulling fluid from the furthest point on this one, so we'll get a bit more out of there, and then we can also pull the air out of there because there's going to be air trapped in the caliper on both sides, right? So let's go ahead, we'll hook this up, I'll show you how it works. All right, so here's our vacuum gauge. We're gonna draw a vacuum, as you can see, so the gauge is up. Then we will crack our bleeder here, and you'll see the vacuum will start going down and it'll start to pull fluid at the top here. So I don't know if you guys can see this here, but see the little bubbles coming out? So it's starting to draw fluid. As you can see here, it's some pretty nasty stuff that came out at first, but I think we're starting to get into the clean fluid that I have up at the reservoir there. So we'll let this kind of siphon through a little bit, and then we'll move to the inside one and we'll work our way around. Okay, now I'm gonna pull a vacuum off the back one. All right, so we pulled a bunch of nasty fluid out of this side. Let's move on to the next brake caliper. Put a vacuum on it. We'll crack it open and let her eat. We'll get all that nasty fluid out. Look at that stuff. Yuck. So this is all the old fluid that was in the caliper probably, because I know my brake fluid wasn't this dirty because I've bled it before with good stuff. So we'll let all this stuff come out until we see some nice new clean fluid coming through with no bubbles. Pull a vacuum here. Okay, here we go with the front passenger, and I'm probably still honestly going to get a friend to help me bleed them. I still prefer that method as far as getting somebody to put their foot on the pedal and, you know, force the fluid out. Reason being is when you loosen these fittings, you don't necessarily get an airtight seal on the actual fitting between the fitting and the caliper itself. So sometimes you can be pulling a vacuum but sucking air out of the fitting between the threads. So I've seen they do sell separate fittings, like different fittings you can get where it's almost like a check valve in this where you can bleed it essentially pretty easily, but these are not it. So you can sometimes be pulling a vacuum out of, you know, through the caliper, or you could be pulling out of through the threads. So I still prefer to force the fluid out. So this will get us close, but like I said, to get that good bleed, I still want to do it with 2 people. So we'll just get it somewhat close and then we'll wrap this up. Here we go, we'll pull our vacuum, and should be some dirty fluid in this caliper, which it is. Ooh, look at that. Looks like root beer. So we'll go ahead and pull out all these bubbles and the nasty root beer fluid out of this. Look at all that. That is a lot of air. I think these front lines are completely dry because quite a bit of fluid dripped out when we did these. You guys ready for some root beer? Let's go. So we'll pull vacuum. And there she goes. That is some nasty stuff. Okay, let's see it start to come up now. I'll mention though, guys, that the brake pedal, when I'm jumping in here and feeling it, it is rock solid. Like, it barely moves. So I think we got most of the air out, honestly. But just to be sure, I'm gonna just bleed it that tiny little extra bit, but this pedal is solid. All right, you guys, so I'm actually waiting for more fluid to show up, truth be told. So I have more racing .4 fluid on the way, and it's supposed to show up tomorrow. So I got most of the preliminary brake bleeding process done. We got that proportioning valve in there, but we don't quite know where the adjustment has to be. I still have to go out and road test it and see how it performs, but I'm super excited about that, you guys. And reason being why we're doing all this brake stuff is for the go fast stuff that you guys are going to be seeing here shortly. So a lot of stuff on the way. If you guys are Viper fans, I got a lot more content for the Viper, and also we're going to be upgrading the rest of the hoses from the 20-year-old rubber hoses, coolant hoses, all the heater hoses, to the silicone ones. So Should be pretty good. I have a lot of fun stuff coming, you guys, so I hope you guys are ready. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, guys, and don't forget the thumbs up. It does help the channel, and if you guys are interested in any merch, down below, also that join button does help and support the channel, and it goes right back into this thing. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next one.